really fast, but you'll run into like 3 cops on motorcycles. And so the difference between a Cadillac is that's the quietest engine, someone said, into a Honda, and he didn't like the way the Honda engine sounded. It did sound like an Audi, where he said it goes fast, except all the stuff inside of it isn't made for it to sound like a Porsche engine. And a Porsche engine is what a BMW is crossed with, if you know how to drive one. And so other than that was a Lamborghini parked in front of like a Mexican shack in Saukville, and it looked like it was on empty. Someone drove a Lamborghini that was equal to the shape of a Bugatti into Saukville and left it on the corner at the same place where I used to walk from town to town, Grafton to Saukville. And it's where a guy told me this morning of an IPN address that Xbox does in the game Halo, that the presets he had to change, and he got in trouble and he said he's a felon. So I can only imagine the information I wrote down about him when he gave me was. And they say mosquitoes can tell where you're at because when you breathe, they look at your breath and they can see different chemical constructs when we exhale. Because when we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out a polarization form of oxygen because our blood is taking the other stuff when we breathe it into our body. So we're breathing in gas into our bloodstream constantly, and the air is full of water. So can you imagine what dinosaurs, how good their air intake was? With whatever that means is, in short distances, like if you park a Lamborghini and it's empty at a shack, it would look cool if the shack is like a cool looking one. So that would be, how profitable can you be? If you can go anywhere and make a mud hut and cook with electricity of a stove on the ground outside of your house, that's raw talent. And what I mean by this is you'll be able to tell how rich the land is around you by saying like some Native American Indian herbalism and knowing how much is good or bad in the winter versus the summer, and starting there with grass around you, because it's not illegal to pick up grass. I saw just down in Milwaukee a slab of grass no bigger than a sewer cap in the center of the road of an intersection, and at the lip of it I saw something injured, like a bird, or it looked like a squirrel that was under the grass. So I'm thinking, if you can walk anywhere and put grass on the ground over an object, you've basically buried it alive. It's just not under the ground yet, even though dirt's on top of it. If you can do that, the book Alchemy was said by this New York homeless guy, and I also know that that's important in the medieval era because they're using that along with Plato's Platonic shapes to generalize science with law. And it got so corrupt that they threw Galileo in jail just because they thought he was a conspiracy theorist for saying that the sun is orbiting planet Earth. But for real, in the last 24 hours, I've seen like 2 police motorcycles at a motocross event hosted in Wisconsin near Plymouth, 25 minutes from. As someone might say, I need to make time. It's like the past outweighs the present because the past doesn't go away. But you can't let that outweigh your future because that's of infinite possibility, as opposed to if your body was a double inside a multiverse, because every chemical construct at every second of you could be uploaded into a multiverse version. But when you start to digest food, I think it would be like a ripple in time with whatever. That movie wasn't Hollywood, so that's why it's important to document scientific features if they're part of cinema, because the United States has a F ton. So because this freedom of speech hasn't able to come across binary formations of what's acceptable and non-profitable, writers in Hollywood are on strike because AI is taking script writing to a quarter for a gumball instead of going into a candy shop and buying a gumball that was homemade by actual people for however much that cost. Have you ever done that? And so in LA is like these writers that are all inside of a strike, and it's been going on for 3 weeks ever since 2007. And the railroad track workers were going to do this too. And instead of that happening, a whole bunch of parts got made from China. Now we've got Chinese items everywhere, which isn't bad. It's like in cars. If you have a gasket and it's blown, it's like an IPN when it pings off something. And then you can check the schematics of your equipment. And so if you change something from Cisco, you'll be known as a felon if it is resourcing equipment that isn't something that you made. It's a copyright infringement. But when it comes to parodies and copyright, they're trying to sell it on the internet, on TV shows that you can make your own artwork. So the likelihood when you're small and you're running on the ground to fall down a hole is twice as likely if you're half as tall, because I know a little girl fell down a hole one time, and then in Milwaukee she was going to fall down a hole again, but she missed, and that hole would have taken her life. And there's places in the United States where there's drain holes in the ground the same size of a hole if you were a toddler running on the grass and it took someone's body when there was a whole bunch of rain and he never surfaced for their sewers. And in Las Vegas this happens all the time because people live down low under the ground, and they say if you don't put boards around your bed you're gonna get covered in you know what swims underground. Rats. Keeping a copyright if it's a siren, if you catch it going off in public. Free copyright.